This Christmas, mend a quarrel, seek out a forgotten friend, write a love letter, share some treasure, give a soft answer, encourage youth, keep a promise, find the time, forgive an enemy, listen, apologize if you were wrong, think first of someone else, be kind and gentle, laugh a little more. Express your gratitude, gladden the heart of a child. Take pleasure in the beauty and wonder of the earth. Speak your love. Speak it again. Speak it still once again. Good morning, December. Good morning, friends. Welcome all, and thank you for bringing your warmth, your light to the North Chapel this Sunday. I am Mary Jean Taylor, honored as always to be helping with the service. The words I began with from a very old but ever-beloved Christmas card I once received, and with no known author, have always touched my heart. I hope they did the same for you. So happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa, happy Christmas, happy Festivus for the rest of us, happy December. Indeed, as the holiday season begins and there are signs of all it offers wherever we might look, I love that our theme this month is the gift of presence. And that's Presence, by the way, having nothing to do with shopping lists. While it may often feel that these pandemic days make us look hard to find our blessings, I do believe these times have reminded me of the importance of the presence of the people I so love in my life. Today, as I look out at your faces, masked as they are, you too are a reminder of the goodness that surrounds and blesses my life. I am so glad you are here to strengthen our circle. There's much to tell you this morning. We are, as most if not all of you know, humming and not singing these days. It's just one more thing we are doing to keep each other safe, but my, oh my, do we miss our adored choir. So skillfully led by Diane. But we are gifted with the presence of David William Ross this morning, who started our service and will bring much more to our time together as we continue. There's a lovely bio about David in your order of service if you haven't already seen it, and we are grateful beyond measure that you have taken the time to be with us. Thank you, David. If you haven't thought to do so, please turn your cell phone off or put it on silent. And gratitude to Francis, whose lovely eyes greeted you as you arrived. And thanks also to Donna Durgan, who did the altar and does so much around here with flowers. I'm sure she's also the one that put the poinsettias in the windows. Speaking of greeters and such, we are in need of greeters and contact tracers for our Sunday services. You can sign up online, and there's also a sign-up sheet out back. We have a couple of other announcements. And first of all, we're going to invite Andres, who is a Change the World kid, to come on up because he has some heartwarming information to share with us. Come on up, Andres. Oh, and Karen, you coming too? Karen's coming too.
Holiday time is absolutely magical, but some children and families need a hand making one part of the magic happen. Change the World Kids has been partnering with the Haven and the congregation to help families receive the gifts they need in the spirit of the community. This is Change the World Kids and the church congregation's 21st year helping with the Holiday Hearts Project. The reason why we started this project was not because we love presents or because we bought into the materialist advertising of the holiday season. It was because a Change the World kid overheard a homeless girl talking about how she'd been teased at school. Kids in her class were talking about what they'd received for holidays, and one girl turned to the little girl and loudly said, "Oh, you don't get gifts for Christmas? Because you're homeless, right?" It made the girl, the homeless parents to whom she was talking to, feel terrible. We discussed this at our next Change the World Kids meeting and created the Holiday Hearts Project to help give homeless children and their parents special gifts to give to each other, and to be able to share on an equal basis in discussions with peers and coworkers about this aspect of the holidays. So the ultimate goal of our project is not so much presents, it is reducing divisions between people, supporting the development of healthy self-images, and reducing bullying. We have written the gift wishes of 30 individuals on hearts and invite you to take home a gift or two and help make your heart and someone else's be warm throughout the holidays. Please return the gifts listed with the heart taped to the outside on Friday, December 17th to the church office hallway between 3 to 6 p.m. When you take a heart, please write your name and phone number on the attached post-it and give it to the Change the World kid. All of the gifts should be unwrapped, so parents have the pleasure of wrapping. Gift recipients are appreciated for clothing. Wrapping paper is also appreciated.
It's not easy to come up here and do that. Well done, Andres. So when are hearts going to be available? After church, Karen and Andres? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you can just come see us. I have little hearts, and then there's little sticky notes. You just put your name and phone number on the sticky note, and then hand it back to us. And then if you can't drop off on the 17th, which is a Friday, just call us and we can coordinate a time for you to pick up or you can drop off the gift in the writing office space.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you and the Change the World Kids for that work. The next announcement is from Leon.
I heard my name and I got nervous. I forgot what it was about. Thank you, David, for being here. I was looking over your bio and I don't have my glasses, so when it said that you were a connoisseur of steel-cut oats, I read that you were a connoisseur of steel-cut cats. And I was going to ask you about it, but I thought better of it because I didn't want to embarrass myself. I also want to thank Mary Jean for talking about presence and spelling it out. That was a battle that I lost in worship committee. I wanted the other spelling, the gift of presence, but I'm just kidding. What I do want to mention seriously is that we have to think about how we're going to do our Christmas Eve service. North Chapel usually sees about 300 people through the door of the sanctuary on Christmas Eve for the two services that we have. Usually they're both very well attended. We won't be able to do that this year because of the COVID restrictions and for our safety. So we will likely have to register online. We haven't figured out the format exactly for how to do that, but we may have to do that. So I just wanted to give a heads up. In all likelihood, around the 15th, I think is what we're thinking about. We will open up the registry to register for either for either of the services, and we'll send out an email and make a form available for that. So just look out for that and be mindful of it. So thank you so much, and thanks for the cat's image. Thank you.
No one else spoke to me about announcements, so I'm thinking we're done with the business of the day. You can always find out more about things that are going on and everything North Chapel in your order of service, in your weekly In Touch email, and of course on our website, the 3ws.northchapelvt.org.
Thank you. That was very, very beautiful. Good morning and good Sunday. I hope that this new day finds you well. To all souls, I say it's good to be together. This morning's reflection is entitled Uncornered and Unconquered. It's about telling healthy stories in challenging times. The kind of healthy stories that make us free. James Baldwin wrote, the very time I thought that I was lost, my dungeon shook and my chains fell off. Baldwin wrote these words because he believed, and I do as well, that it is forever possible to break free from stories that try to corner us, that try to conquer us. Be they stories told by others about us or stories that we tell about ourselves. So I've been thinking a lot this week about the parents of a young man named Anthony Huber. Do you remember that name? I can't imagine what it was like when these parents heard the not guilty verdict in Kenosha. Their son was killed by the man, the boy really, the shooter in Wisconsin, the teenager who longed to be an avenging hero. Anthony was 26, he was a skateboarder. He was a student of balance and momentum. He knew about style and speed. He'd studied traction and inclination. And he was full of life and light until he was killed at a Black Lives Matter protest by a gunman who was 9 years his junior. He was only 17. After the verdict was handed down, his parents were brokenhearted, and they said, "This sends the unacceptable message that armed civilians can show up in any town, incite violence, and then use the danger that they've created to justify shooting people in the street. This is a terrible thing." And still there were those who celebrated it. Celebration makes sense sometimes, like when Al Sharpton celebrated the verdict that was reached in the Arbery case in Georgia. He said, "Let the word go forth that a jury of 11 whites and 1 black in the deep South in Georgia, a state known for segregation and Jim Crow, they stood up in a courtroom and they said that black lives do matter." The dungeon shook. They broke free of a conquering story. Linda Dunikowski, the lead prosecutor down in Georgia, she celebrated as well. She said, "The verdict today was a verdict based on fact. It was based on evidence. Our goal was to bring that to the jury so that they could do the right thing, because our jury system works in this country when you present people with the truth." End quote. In Kenosha, this was not the case. The parents of Anthony Huber did not celebrate. Like I said before, they were brokenhearted. Then, sadly, a member of Congress in Washington made matters worse. Representative Madison Cawthorn tried to tell a conquering story. Cawthorn represents the North Carolina's 11th congressional district. It's out in the western part of the state. After the verdict in Kenosha, he tried to reward the shooter by offering him a job, a congressional internship. And I think this was part of a PR strategy. I think that because he did this on Instagram. Now, I don't know a lot about Madison Cawthorn. What I do know is that he's been having a rough time in the press this year. Back in February, the Washington Post published an article that questioned his integrity, questioned the truthfulness of the stories that he tells about himself. The article was called "The Making of Madison Cawthorn, How Falsehoods Helped Propel the Career of a New Pro-Trump Star of the Far Right." It was a harsh article. You see, Cawthorn survived a serious car accident years ago. He lost the use of his legs, and he could have died, which was terrible. But it's clear from the article, however, that he trades on his injury. Years ago, at the age of 21, he made a speech in which he said that the unnamed driver of the car on that terrible night, on the night that he was injured, fled the scene and left him there to die in a fiery tomb. But then Bradley Ledford came forward and said otherwise. Ledford was the driver. on that fateful night, and he did not flee from the scene. He pulled Cawthorn from the wreckage. So it's hard to take Cawthorn at his word at this point, especially when his word weakens the public interest and the common good. When I see stories like this internship story in the news, I sometimes feel conquered by them. I feel banished. I feel sent into the corner and made to sit there quietly. I feel sentenced and imprisoned, stripped bare and enchained, ordered into a dank and lightless dungeon with no end in sight. I feel broken in two, looking back over my shoulder for the disconnected rest of me. Sometimes there truly are two sides of things, two sides that do not get along. It doesn't always have to be this way. We are stronger when we are together, indivisibly and transformed, united by the stories that refrain from ridicule. Madison Cawthorn did something horrible in a horrible situation. He made the pain of grieving parents even worse by exploiting a story of injustice that serves no one on social media. Nothing truly good can come of this. Now, it's not a bad thing to cling to stories. We just have to be honest about it, and the stories have to be true. We belong to our stories. It's not the other way around. John Duns Scotus told good stories. He was honest, and so were his followers. And I want to tell you about this man, but I have to share something with you first. I have to share something of a confession. I'd like to divulge it to you. It's a little bit embarrassing, but I'm trying to stand in my integrity. I want to learn how to play heavy metal music. Heavy metal music is uncornered and unconquered. I think that I can learn a lot from it. It is uncornered, meaning that it will not be banished or sent away. It is unconquered, meaning that it does not surrender and it won't bow down. I want to learn how to play heavy metal, and if I'm not mistaken, so do you. Let's see if I'm right. Now, I've already chosen a new instrument. I started playing upright bass. Started taking lessons a few weeks ago. I reached out to an old friend who's extremely talented, and I asked for help. He said yes, but for a price. So I'm paying him, but we've been working together ever since. I started with the basics, and I'm progressing slowly, being patient. I'm taking my own sweet time. My schedule is packed these days. I don't always have time enough to practice, but I'm enjoying it so far. I'm getting comfortable with the newness, learning scales again on a new instrument, the left hand position, the right hand position, how to pluck and how to bow. And of course, the most basic thing, how to hold the instrument against my body. I started learning on the electric. At first, the learning curve was reasonable, but now, thank God, everything about my music lessons has gotten so much worse. You see, one day I was inspired and I decided to change my life. I drove over to Ellis Music Center in Bethel, and I rented an upright bass. I rented that colossally large instrument that is taller than most of us. And I'm such a novice. Last week I didn't even know how to care for the instrument. How do you touch it? How do you carry it? It was unnatural to me. My new instrument lives in a bag, not in a hard shell case. And this is new, and I'm not quite used to it. It lives in a bag. A full-length padded winter coat with a big old zipper up the side. It took me a long while to figure out how to take it off and put it on with grace. I didn't know how to store it, how to properly put it away. I just stood it up in the corner. I leaned it facing out as if the bass was looking out over the rest of the room. It felt awkward there and unsteady, but I just left it there, untouched, until my teacher taught me a better way. And that surprised me. He advised me, lean the bass so that it's facing in, toward the corner. It's better that way, more solid, safer. I resisted. I didn't even believe him initially, but it's true because the weight of the instrument is uneven. It's heavier in the front. It's built to fall forward. So when you lean it into the corner, facing out, it rested uneasily, and so did I, until I listened to my teacher lean it facing in. I heard what he said the first time, but I didn't want to listen. I was clinging to an old story that had cornered and had conquered me. I didn't want to lean the instrument facing in, it just felt wrong. So I had to adjust my thinking. I had to unrehearse the story that was keeping me imprisoned. I had to open up my mind. I couldn't shake the conquering story loose. It was really stuck in there, embedded, wrenched. I could not break it free. The story that I had in my mind about being sent into the corner, about being shamed and unfairly punished, banished, and ridiculed. It was a story about being dunced. I couldn't get over it at first, but finally I did. I asked the unhealthy story a question. I sang it a song, a verse from my childhood. My friend Dana Kurtz sang this song when we were young. She sang, red light, green light, 1, 2, 3, have you come to conquer me? I sang the song, I asked this question of the story, and the story answered yes, and finally I stopped telling it to myself. I did what my teacher told me. I leaned the instrument into the corner, and immediately something changed. The very time I thought I was lost, my dungeon shook, and the chains fell off. It happened to me, and if it happened to me, it can happen to you. We can uncorner ourselves. We can unconquer ourselves. We can break free from the stories that imprison. Have you ever felt like you were being made to sit in a corner? Have you ever felt banished or unfairly punished in some way? Have you ever felt like you were being dunced? Now, the word dunced does not exist, although I've used it twice by now. It's not a verb, it is a noun. The word dunce is commonly defined as a person who is slow at learning or stupid. You've heard the word, right? This definition has a history. The word dunce traces back to the 16th century. It was used as an insult and was applied to the followers of a theologian named John Duns Scotus. Duns was a Franciscan. He was a priest and a professor. He taught at Oxford and at the University of Paris. He was most passionately concerned about the primacy of Christ. He was strong. He had integrity. He was not easy to intimidate. And his strength got him in trouble, especially with the mainstream theologians. His impact has lasted over time. Those who studied his writings centuries later were still derisively called duns or dunsmen. These scholars, and this I quote, opposed the new learning, which at the time was the new translation of the Bible, the King James version of the Bible, a version that was honoring of royalty rather than critical of it. The term duns or dunce became a term of abuse and a synonym for one who is incapable of scholarship. The pony hats came later, as did the humiliation of sitting in the corner facing in, punishments for misbehavior, the misbehavior of thinking for one's self. Isn't that something? What can I say? We still live in a pretty strange world. John Duns Scotus wouldn't be amused, by the way. His enemies took their opposition of him, their hatred towards him, and they built their animosity into his name. Then they made his name a derision, and I still believe it 400 years later. If I didn't, I would have been able to take my teacher's advice. That's why I couldn't stand my upright bass in the corner. It's interesting what we do to one another. So, like I said, John Duns of Scotland focused on the primacy of Christ. The most sharply contested question of his day was, if man had not sinned, would God have become incarnate? If man had not sinned, would God have become incarnate? For him, it was an issue of what came first. It was a chicken or the egg kind of thing. Was it the holy incarnation, or was it the sin, the fall from grace, that made it possible for those who lived in the time of Jesus to touch the hand of God? This was fascinating to him, and I think it's pretty fascinating too. It's hard for me to get my mind around it. There's a scene that's sort of about this in a movie called Quiz Show, the one about the fall of Charles Van Doren. That movie briefly discusses primacy and sin, but casually, so I thought I'd start there. Charles Van Doren was an instructor at Columbia University. He allowed himself to become part of an elaborate charade, and in doing so, he scandalously won both fortune and fame. He became an American hero by cheating on a television show. He longed to be special, he longed to be a hero, so the producers of the show made his dreams come true. He looked the part, and that's why the producers were interested. Charles Van Doren was young and handsome and wealthy and clean cut, outwardly and optically Christian, and that was important, unlike his worthy opponent, Herbert Stemple. Herbert was a Jew who lived in Queens. He was not glamorous. He had what they call in the industry a face for radio. By contrast, Charles Van Doren was pretty, and the camera liked him quite a lot. So Charles Van Doren became what they called the Great White Hope in that time. That's part of how they sold him on the ruse. The TV producers were drawn to him because of his pedigree, for his privilege. They liked the silver spoon that he had in his mouth, and they even tried to sell this back to him. They said, "You're young, you're clean cut, you're from a prominent family. Kids will run to do their homework to be like Charles Van Doren." They weren't racists. Not personally, that is. They loved Herbert Stemple, but they also knew that the public had grown tired of him. He'd been on the show for quite a while. Kids don't look up to him, they said. They asked, if you were a kid, would you want to be an annoying Jewish guy with a sidewall haircut? That's a quote, by the way. This is a true story. It took place in the middle of the 1950s. It was the aftermath of the Second World War. The world wanted heroes back then, so this television game show set out to create one. Their model hero, the one they were trying to emulate, was a baseball star, Joe DiMaggio. They wanted to create their own version of this. They said, you see, that's what this country needs, an intellectual Joe DiMaggio, with the women and the money and all of that, but from his brain, not with a ball and a bat. That's what they were after, and Charles Van Doren fit the bill. The charade succeeded at first, and Charles amassed a great deal of money, but it all came crashing down, and he lost far more than he gained. The scene about primacy was set at a festive party. Prominent professors and top students were all there rubbing elbows and being impressed with themselves and one another. An attractive, blushing young woman, a recent graduate, approached Charles's father, the professor Mark Van Doren, who taught poetry. She said, "Professor Van Doren, I took your course at Columbia, Hawthorne, Original Sin, and the American Experience. Well, this sounds silly, but it changed my life." Mark responded dryly with a question about primacy. He asked, was it the Hawthorne, or was it the sin that affected you so deeply? For him, it was an issue of what came first within this young woman's heart. For John Duns Scotus, the question was different. He asked, is it inclination or the fall from grace that drives us most? Some Unitarian Universalists don't believe in the idea of the fall from grace, but they still are pretty affected by the movie when it happens to Charles Van Doren. Now, this is a Robert Redford film, so you have to wonder how he did it. And I'll just tell you, I would issue a spoiler alert, but the movie's almost 30 years old. So. The fall of Charles Van Doren takes place in a stairwell. He's been offered a great deal of money in exchange for his integrity. At first, he is disgusted and resistant until he allows himself to be bought because it's a considerable amount of cash. Then, gleefully, he runs down the stairs into his own demise. It's a wonderful and terrible scene. So, when do you think God shows up for Charles Van Doren? After he took the money? Or do you believe that God was there all along? Do the devotees of the faith exist for the Savior, or is it the opposite? Does the dog wag its tail, or does the tail wag its dog? Theologians really wrestle with questions like this because the consequences are so powerful. What comes first, the theological chicken and the egg? I just said the phrase theological chicken, and nobody laughed at me. We need to work on that. Is it dog eat dog in the worlds of earth and heaven, or is it the other way around? Of course, I'm joking here, but the question is a serious one, and it has sharply divided the Christian world for years, sharply, as if into gangs, essentially, as riotous and as adversarial as were the Sharks and the Jets. If only the Broadway legend Stephen Sondheim could have coached us earlier, because I can see the street fight rumble brewing up in the alley, the onward Christian soldiers queuing up and taking sides. And there is Stephen Sondheim in the middle, chilling out and singing, "Boys, boys, crazy boys, stay cool, boys. Breeze it, buzz it, easy does it. Turn off the juice, boys. Go, man, go, but not like a yo-yo schoolboy. Keep it cool, boys, real cool." We would have been wise to take his sage advice and keep things cool, but we didn't. We made a holy mess of things. What can I say? It happens. This happens without heavy metal music. This is why I confessed. Generally speaking, when we're talking about heavy metal music, we're talking about cutting edge and super powerful, super aggressive hard rock bands. That's the image, right? Rough and tough. The bands have aggressive sounding names like Slayer and Twisted Sister, Iron Maiden and Motley Crue, Black Sabbath and Judas Priest. The band names by themselves sound like they're about to break commandments. This is not what I'm trying to talk about. The heavy metal music that I'm trying to talk about is forged in a crucible as strong and as tender as North Chapel's sanctuary. Do we all know what a crucible is? A crucible is that precious sound and deeply sacred chamber within which our true metal, our newest metal, is being forged right now. What is this? What is our true and newest metal? Steel is forged in a crucible. It is an alloy of iron and carbon. Bronze is forged in a crucible. Bronze combines copper and tin. There are many metals: iron, silver and gold, aluminum and titanium, copper. The list goes on for a while. There are many kinds of metal, but this is not the kind of metal I mean. I do not mean metal, M-E-T-A-L. If I did, the examples above would prepare the way for a poetry. Our spirits are strong as steel, hearts of gold and silver spoons and silver linings. But this is not the metal that I mean. I've been talking about its homonym, metal, M-E-T-T-L-E. This word metal is not defined as silver or as gold. It's much more valuable than that. This metal is defined as our ability to cope well with difficulties, our ability to face demanding situations. Our metal is the value of our integrity in challenging times. Now, the verdict in Kenosha made things challenging, and sadly, Congressman Cawthorn made things worse. But he's teaching us something. We would do well to learn from him and to stand with him as we do. He's teaching us something, whether he knows it or not, and whether he cares or not. He's teaching us that we are more beautiful than this. We are forged together by a fire of what Martin Luther King would have called the fierce urgency of now. Because Linda was right, the lead prosecutor in the Ahmaud Arbery case. She was right when she said that the verdict in Kenosha was based on evidence that when you bring the facts to we the people, we do the right thing. The jury system works in this country, she said. When you present the truth to the people, we forge something stronger than heavy metal. And we free ourselves from stories that try to corner us and try to conquer us. As long as we keep thinking for ourselves. Stephen Sondheim died last week at the tender young age of 91. Last Sunday in New York City, the theater community gathered in Times Square to honor, to mourn, and to celebrate his life. They sang his songs. They sang his music because Stephen Sondheim touched our lives. He touched our lives with the music of deep integrity, heavy metal music. Metal, M-E-T-T-L-E. And Sondheim touches us this morning, for we will close with his poetry, as he assured us, and I believe him, that there is a place for all of us. No one is banished and sent to the corner. Somewhere there is a place of peace and quiet and open air. It waits for us somewhere, and there's a time for us. And someday, somewhere, we'll find a new way of living, and we'll find a way of forgiving, and we're on the road. So I'm glad that Stephen Sondheim was right, even though it doesn't feel like he's right sometimes. There is a place for us. There is a meeting place for all, where no one is cornered, where no one is conquered. Will you go? Are you there already? Can I meet you, Tony, Anthony, out where all of us are free? May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.